All right, everyone. So this game between the Buffalo Bills and the Houston Texans is a pretty interesting one. First, starting out with game total, it is a lower scoring game, 43.5 total points. Also, the Bills are going to be 6-point favorites. I think we would agree with that. Both defenses have been pretty good. And if you're looking at it, guys, the Texans are still banged up with CJ Stroud being out, so they're going to be starting Davis Mills. But the most interesting part about this slate is what is going on with Keon Coleman. So I think we should start there in regards to us placing some prop bets. But before we do that, just real quickly, guys, looking at some, more traditional sportsbook bets where we could bet on the spread, total, or money line. If you guys think the Texans can cover at 5.5 on FanDuel at plus 100, that'd be the best route to go. Other than that, I don't really see a point in betting on this game in this sense. I think it's better for prop bets. So Keon Coleman ended up being a healthy scratch in the last game, guys, due to him showing up late to a meeting or not showing up to a meeting. One of those two doesn't really matter. There are reports suggesting that he could end up sitting again for this game to really discipline him. And honestly, I think based off of how Terrell Shavers looked, I think it could be warranted. Now, guys, if you remember throughout the preseason, Shavers was someone that was consistently gaining a lot of hype out of camp, and he was someone that was productive throughout the preseason, ended up hitting that big play in that game against Tampa Bay. And again, not too shocking that he filled in for Keon Coleman in the Keon Coleman role. He is someone that just does a lot of things correct and things that you just like to see on film. And so I am all aboard the hype train for Shavers if he does indeed end up playing in this game in replacement of Keon Coleman. He should end up getting some snaps regardless. All right, guys, so what's interesting about Shavers here is that, he is someone that would benefit if Coleman were to end up sitting again in this game. He is someone that ended up only with 53% of the snaps last week, though. So they did divvy out the snaps a decent amount, but also they didn't necessarily need to get their receivers all too many snaps as they were playing with the lead. He did end up with 50% route share, which I don't necessarily love, but ended up with 5 targets in that game. The issue with Shavers is that prior to last week, he wasn't playing all that many snaps. Over the last 4 weeks, starting with week 8, 40%, 47%, and 36%. That being said, he is a big play type of receiver. The issue that we have here is he's going against the Texans, who have been the third best defense in regards to giving up production to opposing receivers. So that is kind of my concern there. But I do think just overall, betting on the Buffalo Bills and their receivers is you could almost do a bet where you're betting on Keon Coleman to not be active, where you're betting on his under, and then you could also just be on Shavers for his over. Now, that's a little bit risky because Shavers will be active regardless, it seems like, whereas Josh Palmer might sit if Keon Coleman is active. We saw Palmer ended up playing last week, guys, ended up getting 51% of the snaps after having sat out the last couple of games due to an injury. Now, Gabe Davis ended up getting some work as well, guys, playing 40% of the snaps as well. So there is a path where we're just betting on a lot of the other receivers for their overs and hoping that Keon Coleman ends up sitting. But I'm kind of all aboard the Shavers hype train. Again, it really doesn't take much for him to hit a play. Now, on top of that, guys, we do know that Dalton Kincaid is going to be out in this game as well. So we do have Dawson Knox, who does also draw a tough matchup going against the Texans defense. They're not as good against tight ends, but pretty much just the whole defense is good, guys. So it's not like because they're very good at stopping receivers that we're going to target the tight end. But Knox has played 67 and 76% of the snaps over the last 2 weeks, 76% of the snaps last week with Kincaid out. And so I don't hate this bet. It really just depends on how well you think the Texans defense and offense is going to do. Do you think it's going to end up being a close game like Vegas expects it to be? If so, then you might like that bet there for Dawson Knox. That being said, the weakness in the defense is certainly rushing the football with the running backs or just in general production given up to opposing running backs. So I do want to get into James Cook real quick. I like the fact that Vegas is telling us to bet on a bunch of his overs, that they're all the favorite side of it, because I do think James Cook is someone that we should be targeting. Now, he does draw a difficult matchup as well. Everyone on Buffalo is going to draw a difficult matchup. The Texans defense has just been that good. That being said, guys, James Cook is kind of getting in 2025, which you would consider a workhorse workload, where he is clearly the RB1, playing in about 70% of the snaps, which is higher than I think most people realize. Ended up with 68% of the snaps last week, ended up getting a bunch of usage as well, as you would want him to get. And so I do think that he has a great chance to end up scoring a touchdown in this game, guys. 51% likelihood for this to bet to end up hitting. And I do like this spot. You might see more of more traditional offense out of the Bills because the Texans are a pretty good team, just more standard plays, which would obviously lead to James Cook being a useful commodity to have in our bet slips for this game. Now, guys, for Josh Allen, I don't really want to place any bets for him. I do think that this is kind of a difficult matchup going against the Texans. Now, sure, he played extremely well last week, in the second half last week, I should say, made a bonehead INT earlier on in the game. But overall, the Texans DST has been just too good for me to really want to really go out of my way to target Josh Allen. There's really not a side that I want to be on him with for the overs or unders. So again, with the Bills, I think we're looking at maybe trying to gain an edge with whether or not Coleman is going to play. Shavers could be someone that we're looking at if he does end up sitting. And then I think we're looking at James Cook to score an anytime touchdown. So now we're going to go ahead and get into the Houston Texans, guys. So one of my favorite bets last week was Jaden Higgins for his overs. And I kind of feel like that's the approach that we should be going with again in this game. My expectation is that the Buffalo Bills are going to be playing with the lead. Thus, the Texans are going to be playing from behind. Thus, Jaden Higgins should be a valuable commodity for us in this game. And it really comes down to which side of this you guys want to end up on. But if you want to bet on his over receiving yards or his over receptions, both of them are about a 51% likelihood for those to hit. Now, again, the issue with the Texans is that the Buffalo Bills have been pretty good at stopping opposing receivers. So it would be a bet that I would like much more if Buffalo was kind of poor in their secondary. No, they're pretty good. So that is a concern. But Jaden Higgins has been someone that's been more involved recently, guys. So last week ended up getting 60% of the snaps total, 58% of the routes. Him and Xavier Hutchinson basically played about the same, which I was a little bit surprised by. But he ended up with 4 receptions, 55 receiving yards, and over 100 air yards. Okay. And he had 7 targets in that game. And so he was clearly like the number 2, number 3. Dalton Schultz was pretty involved as well. But I just think the lines that we're getting him are pretty egregious for, one, how good he's looked, but the role that he's had, especially with Davis Mills being the quarterback. Now, it is worth calling out, guys, the last 2 weeks have been much easier matchups, okay? That is something I need to call out. Denver, somewhat of a similar matchup, not much going there for him. And then you could also do over 2.5 receptions. I'm kind of indifferent. If one hits, the other's going to hit. That's kind of where I'm at. And then looking at Dalton Schultz, guys, he has kind of been a security blanket there for Davis Mills. I do worry that this is a very difficult matchup, and so I just don't want to be betting on him. You could potentially get to his under fantasy score on underdog. I don't hate that. I think that's a decent route to go. At the same time, it's not a bet where I'm like trying to go out of my way to target it. And then Nico Collins as well, guys. Nico Collins has obviously been a very big target hog. If you guys like him to have a good game, I would say just bet on his over fantasy score on PrizePicks. If you think he's going to struggle, you could bet on his under fantasy score on underdog. Him to get 5.5 receptions is kind of crazy in the sense that you would think he'd be able to do that. Again, the Bills defense has been extremely good. But over the last 3 weeks now, guys, 9, 7, and 7 receptions. And we got to talk about the targets. 10, 15, 11, and 10, which is obviously crazy. And if those targets are still there, you're telling me if he gets 10 targets again, that he can't get 5.5 receptions? Like, that seems pretty crazy to me. And so I don't mind the idea of potentially looking at Nico Collins as well. And then getting into Woody Marks, guys. Woody Marks is someone that I like a decent amount in this game. He's like the only player offensively that gets a very good matchup. So he ended up playing 66% of the snaps last week, guys. Ended up with 19 opportunities. And again, you look at this matchup with the Bills, guys. Over the last 4 weeks, the Bills have given up 98 rush attempts, 516 rush yards on 5 touchdowns, which is crazy. They've also given up 11 receptions, 100 receiving yards, and a touchdown as well. So if Woody Marks ends up having around the same snaps that he's had, and I think he has firmly taken over the RB1 role coming in off of their bye week. He's seen an average of 70% of the snaps, so we like that there from him, and so I do expect that to continue. And this is kind of the spot that you attack the Buffalo Bills defenses again via the rushing game. And so I do like Woody Marks to get over 15.5 rush yards there as well. Over the full season, guys, the Bills are the second easiest matchup for opposing running backs as well. So I do expect Woody Marks to end up having a good game. That being said, we do see his under fantasy score is actually one of the better bets that we're getting, 55% likelihood for that to hit. As you guys know, it really just comes down to whether or not a player is going to end up scoring a touchdown. Now, I will say for Davis Mills, guys, jumping into him, I don't really see a bet that I need to get to with Davis Mills. We are seeing that his fantasy score at 14.5 is probably a little bit too low. Probably should be closer to 15, which is what Underdog has him at, but really not much there for me. I think the lines that we're getting on him are correct as well. And then let's just zoom out real quickly, looking at all the best bets that we are getting, guys. For Buffalo, the Bills, not the college football team. Keon Coleman for under his fantasy score is the best bet that we are getting. So again, kind of just another way to go about betting on him. And then for Houston, the best bet that we are getting is actually going to be Woody Marks for under his fantasy score. Dalton Schultz you could do for under his fantasy score as well. All right, so go ahead and get into the bet of the day for this slate. 6 bets here for you guys. So I do like Jaden Higgins again to just continue to play well is really what the bet is there. And I am hoping that the Bills have the lead so the Texans are playing from behind. That would also help out Nico Collins to be able to get over 5.5 receptions. Really, this is a bet on him continuing to get like 10 plus targets. James Cook to score a touchdown in this game. Again, I like that bet. Mostly just a bet on him continuing to have the role that he's had. Woody Marks, really the only player that has a good matchup offensively, and so I don't mind targeting his over. But again, if the Bills are playing with a pretty big lead, which could end up happening. Again, both defenses are good, though, so the game is expected to stay close. If that is correct, then you would expect Woody Marks to be able to get over 15.5 rush attempts. These 2 bets I just like because they correlate. Keon Coleman could end up being a DMP, or he could end up being active by the time some of you guys are watching this video. But if he's out, then this line with Terrell Shavers is definitely going to go up. So as I'm recording this video, I think that is worth the risk. Again, that could end up changing by the time some of you guys are watching this video. That's going to do it though, guys. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. That is greatly appreciated when you guys do that. That does help out a bunch. Thank you guys for watching. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.